The Bookish State.
Hello, I'm author and illustrator Grace Lynn, and I'm here to welcome you to the Bookish State podcast, tips for teachers and librarians. The Bookish State celebrates state children's book awards, and this season features middle grade titles from the Connecticut Nutmeg Book Awards list. And today we have Michelle Berry, the author of the Nutmeg nominee book, Moongarden. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay, I'm so glad you're here. Michelle, would you like to introduce yourself and your book to our listeners and
Sure.
viewers?
Perfect. So my name is Michelle Berry, and I'm the author of Moongarden. I have a copy here. So I live in Connecticut. I have worked as a newspaper reporter. I've worked in marketing. And about 10 years ago, I started writing, and Moongarden was my fourth book that I've ever written, and it's the first one that was able to be published, then followed by Sea Garden and Ash Garden, which are the rest of the trilogy. Do you want me to talk a little bit about the plot of
Yeah,
the
tell
book?
us about Moongarden.
So my quick elevator pitch for Moongarden is that it's a sci-fi retelling of The Secret Garden set at a boarding school on the moon with magic. It's kind of like all my favorite tropes, like just mashed together. And The Secret Garden was one of my favorite books growing up. So I really wanted to tell a story that kind of like was a nod to that original story, but obviously with my own twist on it. And the biggest twist I could think of was to set it on the moon, when where there are obviously are no plants. So that's kind of how that developed. But to dig a little bit more into the story, in this world where my main character Myra lives, there's different types of magic based on what STEM field you have a talent for. So, for instance, if you are really talented with math, you are a number whisperer and you have math magic. If you have an ability for medicine, you have kind of medical related magic as a mender and so on. And my main character, Myra, goes to a boarding school on the moon for kids that are gifted with different STEM fields of magic. Her parents are very talented number whisperers. They have very impressive math magic, and everyone thinks Myra's going to kind of follow in her footsteps. But unfortunately, she isn't developing any magic, and she's keeping that secret for now. And she's just kind of biding her time before people find out. And in the meantime, on the moon, plants are considered dangerous and forbidden. It's part of the reason why, or the main reason why people had to evacuate the Earth, hundreds of years before the story began because the plants there turned toxic, so they had to leave for off-world settlements. So Myra is kind of exploring her school, just kind of waiting for, herself to be caught out with no magic, and she stumbles upon a secret garden hidden in the school. And then she also discovers that she has a magic for the plants, which she's very excited about because she hasn't had any magic, but also this kind of sets up a dangerous conflict for her since plants are forbidden. And then the story kind of just develops from there.
Wow, that's fascinating. You know, okay, one of the first questions the kids ask, I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of kid questions,
Sure.
but I had an order set, but because you told me that, I'm going to take them out of order. So where did you get the
Sure.
idea for this book? Because this is
So
a
this one was kind
fascinating
of
idea.
like, so my favorite story, one of my favorite stories as a kid was The Secret Garden, and I was actually taking a walk with my family. I think we were in Newport. I went to school in Newport, so we go back and visit sometimes. And there's all these like really beautiful estates there with like these like old school kind of gardens that just kind of creep over the walls. And I remember walking past one of those houses and seeing kind of this sprawling garden. And it really reminded me of how much I loved the story of the Secret Garden. And it didn't have like actual magic in that book, but kind of like the transformative magic that nature had for the main character, Mary, in that story. And I really just wanted to capture that in my own story. So then, like I said, I started thinking about how could I, take the seed of that original story and put my own spin on it. And, I decided to set it on the moon with actual magic, and then it kind of just evolved from there.
Wow. Okay, so this is not a kid question, but this is my question. What do people eat?
That's a great question. So that's kind of like the big premise of the book is that for the hundreds of years that people have been living off world, they took plant samples that they knew were safe from the earth when they evacuated, and they've been kind of using cloning technology to just keep reproducing those in order to make the food. But what the government kind of doesn't want people to know that Myra ends up finding out is that the food cloning formulas are breaking down and they're not working anymore. So now there's kind of this question of how are they going to have food? And Myra has this wonderful garden which could hypothetically grow food, but in this world they think of plants as dangerous. So that kind of is one of the main conflicts of the story as well. That's a great question because that was kind of the driving force of like how I kind of developed some sort of conflict into the story.
And okay, also not a kid question, but
Mhm.
because it's such a fascinating, your story sounds so fascinating. What would you call yourself? Would you be like a would you be a number whisperer? Would you be would you
Definitely not.
what would you think
Math
of
was always a
yourself?
struggle for me. So probably so there's like chemistry magic, electrical magic, engineering magic. I would probably the closest one I would fall in is probably the botany magic, which is the plant magic, even though I'm not super great with my own gardening, but I really that's what I would enjoy the most out of those. A lot of people ask me like if I decided to have the magic based on STEM fields because that's what something I excelled at as a kid, and it's actually the opposite. A lot of those fields, like, advanced math or advanced science, like they were so far beyond what I could comprehend. It almost seemed like magic, like when people were describing it to me. So that's kind of the inspiration behind that. But if I had to pick one, I would probably pick the plant magic. That one seems
Really?
the
So
most fun to me.
what would a writer be though? Would that be word magic?
So there isn't word magic, but I have thought about that. If we were kind of to expand it into like the kind of the more creative arts and whatnot. And actually, this isn't super spoilery, but in the second book, the main characters go to a sister school on Venus where the same principles still apply. The magic is still based off of the different STEM fields, but the way they interpret that magic is very different. So they use number whispering magic to, compose music, or they use mender magic, which is kind of like the medical magic to like enhance their dancing and that kind of thing. So they kind of funnel the sciences into the
Uh-huh.
arts, which
Ah,
probably where I would belong in that
uh-huh.
world.
And that's
So that was
great
a lot of
because
fun.
and that's really great because I think we talk so much about STEM and it shows how everything is overlapped, right?
Yes, exactly. And there is a lot of, STEM in the arts, which it was kind of cool to
Exactly.
explore that kind of side of the magic.
And there's a lot of creativity in STEM as well. So,
Exactly.
but now we will go to the real kid questions. Okay, because we have so many
Awesome.
kid questions
Oh,
and we
I
have
love
some
it.
teacher questions as well.
Mhm.
And we actually have a couple of live questions that we have a couple of, we have a couple classes watching us live. Yay, welcome.
Hi,
And
yay. Hello.
they are sending questions in the Q&A right now. So, we'll do a couple of the people who are here live. Okay. Um, one person is asking, what character do you see yourself as in Moongarden?
Ooh,
This
that's
is
such a great
a student,
question.
Adithya. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong.
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Thank you for asking it. So I relate kind of to different characters in different ways. So Myra, at the start of the book, she's kind of a loner. She has trouble fitting in, which I definitely have gone through that, especially like as a kid in like middle school. Like, where are you going to sit at lunch? All of those things were always like anxiety inducing for me. The way I differ from Myra is she has this like inner confidence with her too, where she can, act like she doesn't care. And she's really, in some ways, fine being on her own, though she does benefit from the friendships, obviously, that she forms and she learns kind of how to let people in and whatnot throughout the story. And then she has another friend named Lila, who's kind of like the peacemaker of the group. She's kind of the voice of reason. So I could kind of relate to her in that way as well, just kind of being that like calm personality in there and that sort of thing.
Cool. Okay, so Liam asks, what was the hardest part of writing your book?
Ooh, that's another great question. It was a long road to get this book from a first draft to being published. So I think just being able to keep fresh eyes on it as you're revising and editing over time. And I'm sure a lot of the kids can relate to this when you're doing an essay for school and you have to, revise it and then edit it. And, maybe you're changing, some of the, if it's a story, some of the characters and whatnot, or you're just kind of going through and doing like a copy editing sweep where you're just changing the sentence structure and word choices. And sometimes I'm sure even with homework, you see things two or three times before it's done. And it can get a little bit draining trying to keep a fresh perspective on it. So that's always hard, I think, with writing books because it does go through so many rounds of edits to just kind of keep that fresh perspective on it. So that's definitely a challenge as you're kind of developing it.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Mhm.
Okay, so Winter, you kind of answered this, but I think they would like you to expand on it.
Yeah.
Have you ever started a book but never published it? Because you mentioned the
Oh, yes.
four other books that you had written first.
Yep, exactly. So I think writing, like anything, is a journey and it's a skill just like sports or music or arts that you really have to kind of polish and hone over time. So Moongarden was the fourth book that I wrote. I wrote, obviously three before that, and I can see how each one got a little stronger as I got a little better and got more practice in. So Moongarden was the fourth book I've written. Then obviously there was Sea Garden and Ash Garden, and then I have a couple other projects that were like in various stages of development too. So it's a journey, and I hope 10 years from now, like I'm writing things that are better than I'm writing now even. So yes, so many books before that that will probably never see the light of day, which is fine. They were a good learning experience, and yep, that's a great question.
Yeah, let's talk about the those early ones just for a moment,
Sure.
just because I think that's what they were getting at. So
Mhm.
how long did it take for you to write each of those books that weren't published?
Sure. So it varies. So I participated in what's called National Novel Writing Month,
Mm.
and I don't think it's a thing anymore, but it was at the time. It was where writers from all over the world would kind of get together. It was like an online platform that you would use, and you would try to write a whole book in the month of November. And it was really great for tracking like your word count. Like it would tell you how many more words you need to write that day in order to stay on target, which I found really helpful. So my first draft of Moongarden I did during Nano National Novel Writing Month. So it took me a month to write the first draft. But like I said, with the revising and editing, it's changed very drastically since then. But I found that really helpful for just trying to get words down on paper. I think another really difficult part of writing is kind of forcing yourself to actually sit down and do the writing part, and not getting hung up on everything being perfect. I try to remind myself you can't edit a blank page. You can always go back and revise things. Sometimes you don't know what the beginning should look like until you write the end. So just kind of pushing yourself to kind of keep going and just keep getting words down on paper. You can always go back and edit it. So I think that's really important, but also really tricky to just kind of find the time, find the focus to kind of keep everything moving forward.
So Hisham asks, what kept you going even after I guess because you didn't publish the first three, what kept you going even
Yeah, so
after you wrote
there's,
those?
lots and lots of rejections with those first three, and it's just something you kind of have to tough out, just like with anything with sports, with auditioning for like a theater production. You just kind of have to take the no's in stride, learn what you can from them, and keep going if you have that dream. And for me, my dream was to see my book on a bookshelf somewhere and have, kids reading it and being able to have conversations like this where you get to like kind of talk about it with different readers and everything. So just having that dream in the back of my mind kept me kind of going forward through the rejections, through all of the, different drafts and edits and all the time and everything, and trying to like squeeze in writing time here and there. I work full time, not as a writer, and I have, kids in middle school, so they have lots of activities and sports and family time and that kind of thing. So finding pockets of time to write can be really tricky, but just, wanting to see those books out there in the world is really the big motivator for me, at least.
So that actually might tie into the next question from student Julia, who
Mhm.
asks, do you like being an author? What is the best part? What is the worst part?
I love being an author. It still even seems weird to be able to say that. The best part, I think, is when I hear from readers, whether it's like I was at a book festival this past weekend, or I've gotten like little notes in the mail or like submissions to my website. And it's just so fun hearing people's kids' reactions to the books. And it reminds me of being a kid and having, ideas and thoughts about the books I was reading. So that's just a really cool, surreal thing to be able to like interact with readers in that way and chat about, what theories they have, especially when the series wasn't complete, and kind of hearing what they thought where the series was going to go and their different fan theories and that kind of thing. It was just so fun. The hardest part, I think, is just finding the time and getting a lot less sleep when I'm drafting and editing and that sort of thing. There's lots of coffee involved. So that's the probably the hardest part. The part I like the least is just trying to, I wish there was more hours in the day just to spend more time writing.
So, Julie, we had Julia, and this is Julie asks, what gives you ideas to write your books?
It's a great question. I talk about this a lot when I do my school visits. I really think you can just find ideas absolutely anywhere. It's just really about kind of paying attention to what's around you and just letting your imagination kind of run wild. Like if you're walking through the woods one day and you're just looking at the trees and you can wonder, like, I wonder how many people have walked past these trees. And then that can lead to, well, what if the trees could talk? What kind of stories would they tell? And then that can kind of, have a story kind of just like spiral off from there. So just kind of paying attention and letting your mind wander sometimes, like not in school when you're supposed to be paying attention, but on other times, like when you're, driving around or taking a walk or anything, you can just see ideas for stories anywhere. It's just about kind of letting your imagination run wild a little bit.
Yeah, there's been all these studies about letting yourself be bored, right? And
Yes,
that's where
exactly.
it is. Like I think we're so eager to like get on the phone or watch
Mhm.
YouTube or do all these things, and I think there's a lot to say of like putting it down and just like letting your mind wander,
Yes,
like you said.
so true. Absolutely.
Someone asks, is writing a book a hobby or a job? This is an anonymous.
Okay. Right now, it's kind of a hobby job, so a little bit of both, I would say. But yeah, it's kind of fun that way. I think it really makes me focused on my writing time. I've heard from other authors that have made the transition to write full time, and they found it. Some of them found it difficult because like right now, when I have 2 hours at the end of the day where I'm gonna write, from like 9 until 11 p.m. I really know I have to be productive during that time because that's the only 2 hours I'm going to get in that whole day in order to, get some words on paper. Versus if you have the whole day, I think it's really easy to get distracted. You have to be really rigid with yourself and still keeping a schedule. So I think that is challenging. So I do enjoy kind of having the balance of all the things right now because it really helps me to focus and make sure I'm like being productive when I do have those writing windows.
So I would say it's a side job. It's still a job. It's
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yes, I agree. But fun
I
like a hobby still. So it's a little bit of both.
but you want to treat it like a hobby because you love it so much.
Exactly. Yes.
This is I get this question quite a bit, and I always think it's such a fascinating way because we can talk about what they are asking about. But
Mhm.
Leonardo asks, "Are you rich from writing books?" And
I
I
think it's, yeah. Oh, is there more to it?
oh
Sorry.
no, I just think that's an interesting.
That is an interesting question. And I think that really varies by the author and, every writer's journey. So, me personally, no, but there are authors that are successful in that way, and you never know. But for me, the riches come from like doing things like this and just hearing from readers. That's the most fulfilling part for me.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to, what, because I get this question also, and I always like to talk about like what do we mean by rich, right? Like,
Yes.
audience, usually I know Leonardo's probably asking in terms of like, do you have
Yeah. Can you,
a,
yeah,
do you have
just like your full job, is just your full
a
career.
mansion? Do you have a
Yes.
mansion with like
No
champagne
mansion.
and everything like that? Like, but I think when we talk as authors, we often talk about like a rich life and like how much
Mhm.
richness that being an author and writing this book has created in the world. I feel like
Mhm.
you're quite rich.
Yeah, absolutely. I would fully agree with that. Yeah, it's just so rewarding just to being able to like have your childhood dream come true, and then also be able to chat with other readers. I think that is just the coolest thing.
All right. Okay. I have a couple more. Oh, I think somebody wants to ask about your other job.
Sure.
Leslie H says, "Do you have another career?"
Yes, yep. So I've worked in marketing, I've worked in insurance, I've worked as a reporter. So I've had kind of the marketing communications path of a professional career, if that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. And
Yeah,
I think they
okay.
kind of tie in together because it's all about communication, right? So you've been really good at learning how to communicate on I guess you would say your other career, and that only
Yes,
helps you with your writing career.
absolutely. They definitely kind of go hand in hand.
Okay. Harlow asks,
Mhm.
how do you plan a book? So I guess this is the old, are
Mhm.
you a plotter or a pantser
Yes.
question, done
It's a
student
great
style.
question. I think I change from one to the other based on lots of things, the story, the timing, what my deadlines are, that sort of thing. I definitely prefer to be a plotter, which means instead of just kind of winging it, and seeing where the story takes you, you're really structuring things beforehand, which is really helpful for me, especially when I have tight windows of writing time. I will say though, sometimes you really just kind of have to go with the flow. Like I remember when I was on deadline, I think probably working on Sea Garden because I was in between like the series. So Moongarden was mostly done. I was probably doing copy edits. I was thinking about how I was going to plot out Ash Garden, and I'm working on Sea Garden in the meantime. And things evolve and change as other things change. Like if there's some edits in Moongarden that affect things in Sea Garden, you kind of have to be able to wing it a little bit and go off script a little. But I really prefer having a chapter outline. So I'm working on a new project right now, for instance, and since I'm not on deadline and it's kind of just at my own pace, I was able to kind of do a very detailed chapter outline, which as I'm writing, I'm finding very helpful in order to kind of move the story along. So that's my preference, but it doesn't always work out that way.
I think because you're talking about copy edits so much, Vivian is asking, how
Mhm.
long is the publishing process?
That's a great question. I actually do a whole school presentation on this. It's a very long, lengthy process, but to kind of boil it down as much as possible. So there's many rounds of edits. The first round are what we call developmental edits. So those are more about character arcs or plot, like the big picture things, the setting, that kind of thing. So that is a 1 or 2 rounds of editing typically, where you're going back and forth with either your agent or your editor or your critique partner, or whoever it may be, to kind of polish up the overall story. When you move on to copy edits, which are the kind of the layer of editing that comes after the developmental edits, you're really working on like word choice, like trimming down maybe a section, really more the nitty-gritty pieces of the writing.
So it just takes a long time
It's a
and it
long time.
feels
Yeah,
longer and it
yes,
feels longer even than it really is.
exactly. It's a long process.
Alric C asks, how did you start writing books in the first place?
That's such a great question. So as a kid, I found like little stories I wrote even going back to kindergarten. For whatever reason, it never really occurred to me that I could do it as like a job. It was just kind of something I did for fun on the side. I kind of drifted away from that as I got older, like high school and college. I really started focusing more on professional writing, like we talked about like journalism and marketing and that sort of thing. And I was working at a manufacturing company, and I think I have a son and a daughter. My daughter's 13 and my son's 11 right now, but I believe my daughter was just born at the time, and I was working at a manufacturing company doing a lot of technical writing, which wasn't super fun and fulfilling. Like it was literally writing about like nuts and bolts, so it wasn't really using a lot of my creative energy. And around that same time, I also read The Hunger Games for the first time, which is one of my favorite books. And it really kind of motivated me and inspired me to like, maybe I could tell a story. Like, I love this story so much. I want to kind of create that, like, for, maybe readers someday of making my own story. So it was kind of a combination of kind of needing a more creative outlet and also being inspired by something I'd read that really made me want to give it a shot and try to write my own books.
That's really cool. Maybe somebody's going to read your books and
That'd be
and
amazing. That'd
want
be
to
my
want to
dream.
write a book as
That'd be
well.
so
That's
cool.
so fun. Okay, so these are some adult teacher questions.
Sure.
Okay. So if you could, can you recommend some middle grade books besides your own that every school library should have?
Ooh, so one that's very popular in my house right now is the Academy series by T.Z. Layton. So it's about a boy that gets scouted by a Premier League soccer team to go and play at their summer camp in England. And I just think they're so well done. They're so well written. We're a big soccer household as well, so that definitely speaks to us. But whenever a new one comes out, it definitely gets passed around the entire house. All of us read it and love it and are always eagerly awaiting the next one. And I've heard of a lot of my kids' friends have been also reading them, so I would definitely recommend that series for any like sports fiction types enthusiasts.
Awesome. Okay. Okay, what's one piece of advice you'd give to a student who dreams of becoming a writer?
I think just keep writing, like just keep putting the words down on paper. The worst thing you can do is just stare at a blank page. Like the more you write, the better you're going to get at it, and the more practice you'll have. And one thing I do like to also tell kids is that there's so many ways to tell a story. It doesn't even always have to be through a book. That's kind of what we think of when we talk about stories. But I mean, music can tell a story, different song lyrics can tell a story, movies tell a story, plays, even video games often have like a narrative to them. So I think everyone has a story to tell, and maybe it's just finding out how that story should be told and how you want to tell that story.
That's true. And paintings, exactly.
Yes, painting, absolutely.
Um, can you give a little sneak peek of what you're working on next? So I think not only the sequels, I think if you
Mhm.
give a little summary, but also the one that you're outlining yourself. I think
Yes,
everybody would love to
so
hear.
I have a few projects in various stages. I have another middle grade novel, which is a retelling, but in a different type of retelling than Moongarden. That is, maybe we'll find a home somewhere someday. It's another like magical sci-fi retelling of a classic story. I have a like kind of a spooky middle grade that's on submission right now, and hopefully we'll find a home with publishers. And I'm currently writing, no surprise here, based on the book I recommended. I'm actually starting a soccer book right now and trying. I've never done a sports book, so we'll see how that goes. It might not, be suited to me, but I'm giving it a shot and seeing kind of where the story takes me with that one.
Yay. Do you want to
Yeah,
give like a little elevator pitch of some of the sequels to Moongarden so they know what to look
sure.
for?
Yep, absolutely. So the sequel to Moongarden is Sea Garden. So that, like I talked about, the students and the group of friends do move off the moon and go to their sister school on Venus. And it's like kind of a we're not in Kansas anymore moment for them because they've only really been exposed to kind of the traditional STEM applications of the magic that they have, and now seeing it in such a creative way through theater and dance and music and art. It's kind of eye-opening for them, and some of the characters take to it really easily and really quickly, and others struggle a little bit. There's also some friendship struggles in that book where, so Myra, the first book to me, Moongarden, is about how, her learning how to make a friend. And in the second book, it's about her learning how to keep a friend because she has her kind of close-knit group of friends at the end of Moongarden, and she starts with them at the start of Sea Garden. And when they go to this new school, her friends start making other friends, and she kind of has to wrestle with that a little bit and kind of understand that just because her friends have other friends, it doesn't dilute their friendship. It doesn't make their friendship any less important. And so that's kind of a lesson she has to learn in that book. I won't say too much about Ash Garden because there's not much I can say without major spoilers. But the kids do go to some new settlements and new planets in that one. There's a new form of magic that's introduced in that one. And probably my favorite part of writing that book was I got to do two points of view. So the first two books are just Myra's point of view. And then the third book, it's a split point of view story with Myra and her best friend Cantor. So it was really fun to get in his head and kind of tell his side of the story. So that was a lot of fun to write.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yay. Okay. Now we have the lightning round questions. Are you ready for the
Okay,
lightning
I'm
round?
ready.
Okay. So, the lightning round, we have a bunch here. There's 10 questions, and you have to answer as fast as you can. Okay.
Okay, I'll try.
All right. Ready? One, coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee all day.
Two, favorite color?
Ooh, purple.
Three, what time do you wake up in the morning?
5:20, and my kid's bus comes at 6:20, which they're very unhappy about. So we're all up very early.
That is early.
It's early.
Okay. Four, what is the last thing you eat at night?
Oh, not a lot. Maybe chips every once in a while.
Five, what kind of chips, actually?
It's switch. My son's really into the poppables right now.
Oh, yeah,
So
I like
those,
those.
yep. So those are lurking around usually.
Okay. Five, name an onomatopoeia.
Oh, that's a remind me. That's a sound. That's a word like buzz. Buzz.
Buzz, there you go.
Yes.
I catch a lot of authors on that one.
Yeah, I had to think for a second.
Okay. Six, is your bed made right now?
It is. Yes.
Oh, oh my
Yeah, it's
gosh.
kind of
Every
my
author
routine.
has their
Yeah.
bed made.
It's like my lunchtime routine. I go around the house and make all the beds. It's just a thing.
Okay, seven. What was your best splurge?
Ooh, when my husband and I were first dating, we went to Italy on kind of like we probably shouldn't have, but we wanted to go and see a little bit of the world, and I have family there that we met, so that was probably our my favorite splurge.
Ooh, where in Italy did you go?
Rome up to north of Milan.
Ooh, nice.
Yes,
That's a good splurge.
it
Okay,
was fun. Yes.
eight. What was the name of your favorite toy as a child?
Oh, I don't know if it was my absolute favorite, but I definitely had a whole collection of Polly Pockets, which I know are
Oh, I
popular
love
again now,
Polly
which is kind of cool.
Pockets.
Yes.
Okay, nine. If you were a vegetable, what vegetable would you be?
Ooh, a potato. Sounds kind of loungy. I like that. I like the vibe.
Potatoes, very, very, very important vegetable.
Yes.
The staple of everything.
Absolutely. The Martian's one of my favorite sci-fi movies too, and there's a whole like obviously, storyline with the potatoes too.
Okay, 10. What book would you want to be a character in?
Ooh, I have to go with my childhood favorite of Harry Potter, and obviously I love magical boarding schools since I put one in my book. So that would just be really cool to live in that magical boarding school.
Okay, last question.
Hmm.
And this one does not have to be quickly answered because
Sure.
it's the last question that we're going to leave with everybody.
Okay.
What do you think the best thing is about reading a book?
I think just visiting other worlds in your or other real places, even learning about other people. I feel like it's a good way to like kind of explore without leaving your house, whether that's, exploring other cultures and people or exploring other worlds or countries or whatever it may be. I think it's a great way to kind of walk in someone else's shoes for a little while and also kind of let your imagination run away with you.
Yay. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining the Bookish State podcast.
So
Where
much
can
for having
people
me.
find you? Um,
So I'm on Instagram. I have a website. It's all under Michelle Berry Books. And I'd love to hear from any readers.
And you can find more about me at gracelyn.com and more about the Bookish State at thebookishstate.com. You have to put the before the Bookish State. So go to thebookishstate.com. And remember, at the end of the month, we will be holding a live Q&A with a Nutmeg nominated author, just like we did today. Our next webinar will be in January with Megan Freeman and their book Alone. You can go to the Bookish State for updates and register to join live. So I hope to see you all there. And thanks again for joining us and stay bookish.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Thank you.